episode of interviewing ladies on my channel with Wisps of Wisdom. I'm super excited because who better to have for my very first interview than my mother? Because a lot of the wisdom that we get in life is from our mothers. And I'm super excited for you to meet my mother and hear the wonderful advice she has about friendships and insecurity. Alright, welcome Mom to this episode of Wisps of Wisdom. I'm really excited that you get to be my first person to interview because I feel like a lot of the wisdom that I got in the way I learned to think things through was through you. And so I'm really excited to have you here. Why don't you just, for the sake of the audience, the people who don't know you, go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself. Say whatever you like.
All right. Well, it's an honor to be here. And you say you learned a lot from me, but I see you learning a lot from God, and you teach me a lot too. So it's such a blessing. I am Gabrielle's mom, and I'm a mom of 8 children altogether. I spend my time homeschooling, and I find it a joy, even though there's work that doesn't get done and things that fall by the wayside. I really treasure this time with my family.
And a lot of your life is going to be spent homeschooling too, being as I just graduated, so you've already been homeschooling for a good 10 years for me, and that the youngest is 2 and hasn't even started yet. So this is something that's going to be a big part of your life for a while yet.
Right. And I'm looking forward to it, and I'm thankful for the trail you blazed for the others.
All right. So let's go right into, I know that your middle school transitioning into high school was really hard for you because of going to a public school and then transitioning to a private Christian school. So say a little bit about that. What was hard about that?
Okay. Well, my public school experience was a very good one. I had Christian friends, I had Christian teachers, and if the teachers weren't all Christian, they at least respected me for what I believed. And I could feel the respect. They said very kind and encouraging things to me. I had a good core group of Christian friends. They didn't share all the values or practice things the way I did. They were across multiple denominations, but they were willing to stand up for me if there was anyone who said something that was rude about me being a Mennonite. They were quick to stand up for me, and that meant a lot. So it was a really good experience, and I had 120 students that were my age in school, and so of course you find the group that you fit with best. And this was really a special gift because I had 4 close friends, and we went through a lot of years of school together. So I went from having very close friends, looking forward to going to a conservative Christian high school and thinking that I'll be able to have close friends again, but now they'll share my same practices. So they'll dress like I do, and they'll think like I do, and they'll act like I do, and won't this be the best thing ever? And in reality, I realized even if people look the same or somewhat the same on the outside, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to think like you or do things you would do. I didn't feel that I walked into this setting with the same level of respect I had walked out of the old one. So the teachers in my public school who were used to seeing people swearing and bad behavior, of course I stood out as being a very decent and good kid. Once I got to my conservative Christian high school, I was just one of a lot of good kids, and so there was just a big transition. There was also a culture shock, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I didn't connect like I thought I was going to connect right away. So it was very discouraging and depressing. I came home from school. I had never experienced hating school before, but that year was very, very hard. And I would come home depressed and not want to go back the next day. One of the blessings during this time was that my dad had a horse that got rain rot, and I had to give it a bath with a fungicide shampoo every day. And there was something about changing out of my school clothes and changing into something different and going outside in the sunshine and giving the horse a bath that lifted my spirits. And I realized in more recent years too. Getting out in the sunshine, what a gift that can be. Then I think the thing that I was set up for in feeling like I wasn't fitting and looking for acceptance was that there was an older boy in school who started paying a lot of attention to me. I was 14 part of the year and 15 part of the year. He was 18 or 19. And he would go out of his way to tell me I was pretty or tell me he missed me over the weekend. And there were different things about this boy that wouldn't have made it on qualities I want to see in a husband. But I hadn't really thought through qualities I want to see in a husband since I was only 14 and I wasn't planning to date for a while. So it didn't seem to be harmful to talk to him after class. And I realized that I missed a lot of red flags about him because I was looking for acceptance in people. So he would tell me how he liked the story I wrote for the newspaper and how the character in my story was named Herbie, so he named his goldfish Herbie. And the funny thing was, his brother didn't know the goldfish's name was Herbie. So that didn't quite check out, and figured his brother just wasn't paying attention. And one time he told me to give him a call about something, and when his mom answered the phone, she called, "It's one of your little girlfriends on the line." And I thought that was kind of annoying that she would call me one of his little girlfriends. But I really should have noticed the red flag of why would she say one of his girlfriends. And so there were just different times that people would say to me they thought I should avoid him. The high school principal even mentioned he thought I should avoid him. And my dad tuned into the fact that this boy started calling our house, and he said that he didn't want me to have anything to do with him and that he was just using me. And I thought that my dad was just against him for some reason. And so instead of avoiding the boy, I avoided my dad for a time. And as I look back, I realized how blinded I was by wanting somebody to really like me. And then instead of taking the advice of the people around me, I just was irritated with them. And I was irritated with his mom for calling me a little girlfriend. And I was irritated with my dad for telling me to stay away from him. And I read an article in a Christian Girls magazine, and it said, if you're dating somebody or you have a boyfriend your parents don't approve of, it would be wrong to go against your parents' wishes as long as you're a child. When you're 21, if you still believe that this is God's will and your parents for some reason can't bless it, then that would be a point for you to reconsider. And I thought, now there we go. I can obey my parents and wait till I'm 21 because he says he would wait for me. He says he's going to break up with this other girlfriend and wait for me. So as I tell this story, I realize how preposterous and ridiculous the whole thing sounds. But at the time, it just really meant a lot for somebody to think that I was beautiful and want to be with me. And I'm so thankful for my dad telling me to stay away from him. Because there, like I said, there were so many red flags. And so he graduated and moved on, and everything came to an end because all it ever was conversations. And he went on and married somebody else, but never lost the having multiple little girlfriends. And he soon left his wife and lived a very regrettable life. And if my advice to other girls who find themselves in a situation where their parents are warning them and their friends are warning them, please heed the warnings, even if you think it's that your parents are against you and they don't understand you and they're not in touch and they don't understand. Please just obey and respect them anyway, because they can just save you a life of hardship. But then the thing that was such a blessing was one time, before this was all over, my mom had given me a journal that if ever I wanted to talk to her about something but I didn't feel that I could say it, that I could write it down. And as I wrote down this situation to her and how I felt, I could really see in my own writing that I was turning to a person because I was feeling insecure and wanting to be loved. And that was very eye-opening for me. I kept thinking how to rewrite it so it wouldn't sound like that, but I realized that just was what it was. And in the next year, I really poured my heart out more to God and looked in His Word to find truth. And He really showed me He loves me. His love was what I needed to be filled. And I kept looking for that perfect group of friends who would be fun, and I would click with them, and they would look like me, and they would think like me, and they would act like me, and we would get along so well, and we could all, our churches would be identical, how much we could be alike, and it was really elusive. But I realized that when I went to God, He could completely fill me, and then when I was full of Him, I would be able to reach out to others. So when a very shy girl who didn't have friends joined the school and I reached out to her, then there was so much joy in reaching out. And when another girl was going through a very hard time and I took the time to pray with her, there was so much fulfillment in reaching out. And it clicked with me. This is the key. Let God fill me and then reach out to others. And then I was so fulfilled. So it wasn't waiting for people to reach out to me. It was an opportunity for me to be filled by God and to reach out to them and not try to find my fulfillment in a person.
And I feel like that's something that a lot of girls struggle with, especially it's easy to look at the outgoing girls and think that they've got it all together, that they're having a great time. We don't often struggle with, in the moment of being there, we're having a great time. We kind of suppress all those feelings of doubt and discouragement and whatever, and we just have a good time. It's when we're headed home and we start thinking through everything we said and everything we did and start analyzing it and thinking about, well, how did I actually say that, and how did that person say it, and oh my goodness, what I said could have really been said wrong, or it could have been perceived wrong, or like that was just the wrong thing to say, and they probably think I'm a horrible person now. And it's just it's easy to think that the quiet people for us have it all together then, because they just don't say anything stupid.
Right. Yeah, that is such a common thing. And I think any personality, any girl, especially in this time period in the teen years, just wonders, am I pretty enough? And they would answer it, no, I'm not. Am I thin enough, or am I too thin? Am I the right personality? And girls have such an easy time just hearing that voice of their enemy saying, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not lovable. And it's not true. And I think of the Bible memory passage we had in high school that was so meaningful to me from Psalm 139. And it's a reminder from God that He sees us and knows us. He knows our thoughts before we think it. He knows the words we say before we say it. There's no place we can go that we can hide from Him. And through it all, He loves us. And it's just a good reference to go back to when you're struggling with, am I good enough? Am I lovable? Psalm 139, to be reminded that God thinks about us more than the grains of sand on the sea. And He adores us. Because when we can be convinced of that, then we can handle the fact that we said something stupid and flubbed up.
Right. And you probably already kind of worked this into what you said, but let's go ahead and look at what was the best piece of advice you received during that time in your life. What really helped you with when you were struggling with feeling these insecurities and feeling like you didn't have friends who could be there and fill those insecurities, and you had to, learn to look to God
for everything and to fill those insecurities, what was the best piece of advice that you received?
I think during that time, it wasn't so much advice that I received. I'm very thankful that my mom was such a good listener, and she gave me a lot of good advice. So she gave me advice like, when you're thinking about what you're wearing and how everybody must notice how ugly it is, realize they're all thinking about how they look, not about how you look. And I still try to remember that sometimes when I think that something is not the way I want it to be, that people are probably not inspecting me to criticize me as much as worrying about if they're measuring up. But I think through this time of insecurity, rather than there being a certain word of wisdom that somebody gave me, God allowed me to go through the struggle. So he didn't provide a quick fix as soon as the first day of school felt painful, and the second day of school felt painful, and the third day of school felt painful. He let me go through those hard things and bring it to him over and over. And he started showing me how he cared about each of those things. He cared about the situation with the boy. He cared about the fact that I was discouraged when I came home, and he provided this opportunity for me to go out and shampoo my horse. And so sometimes there are magical words of wisdom that are a light bulb that change everything. But for me, I needed to go through the hardness of it and have God be the one who was real to me. And then coming out of that, I realized the great importance of every day looking to God, remembering how he answered yesterday's prayers. And so I started trying to start my devotional time with, thank you that yesterday when I prayed about the history test, that you helped me. And thank you that when I prayed about not knowing what to say to my friend going through the hard time, you helped me. And then when I could count those things, I would be reminded, this is the God who helped me yesterday. This is the God who's going to help me again today. Even though today's problem now seems way worse than yesterday's problem, and I don't see how I'm going to get through today's problem. And then just pour out today's problem to God and ask him to speak to me, and then open my Bible and read it and look for that truth. And it was just incredible to see him time and time again. Something would stand out in my devotions that he was speaking to me. And then even if I thought my problem wasn't going to be solved, how by the next day I could look back and say, thank you for answering this, and thank you for answering this. And so it was a real faith journey. I think those times in my teen years were, I consider, the hardest times in my life. And I also am thankful that I went through them to have the depth of the relationship with God.
Wow. And then I feel like the best piece of advice that I got from you was just the idea of letting God be your best friend,
Right.
and letting God be the person who's pouring into you, and be like, he's perfect. People aren't perfect.
Right.
And so when God can be your best friend, then he gives you the confidence and the joy and the peace to be able to be that good friend to other people,
Right.
and not need them to be a good friend back to you.
Right.
And so that, like, if everyone was doing that, going to
Right.
God for our joy and our strength and our fulfillment, and when we have these insecurities, that we're taking them to him instead of trying to dress differently so that people will accept us,
Right.
that our friendships would be so much better, because it would be us encouraging each other in our relationships with God, instead of us trying to encourage these relationships with each other by almost competing with each other.
Right. Right. I think as long as we keep trying to measure up to be lovable, it's just a bottomless pit. So our clothes will keep changing, our hair will keep changing, we'll be getting more and more like the world and farther from God, as long as we're trying to do something to be fulfilled by people liking us enough. But you're right, when God is our best friend, and he will completely fill us, And when we're low and we need a friend and we go to him and he reminds us again, I have loved you with an everlasting love.
Mm-hmm.
And we're full, then we can give in any relationship. So when you have a friend and you feel like things are getting strained with your friend, or your friend doesn't really like you, or whatever, to stop and say, I am feeling needy, maybe hurt. I need to take it to God and let him fill me. And then when I am full of God, then I can reach out in service to others, and suddenly I'm full. But I thought I needed them to fill me, and I'm reaching out to them, and now I feel satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, this will carry through life. This will carry into marriage. So if a woman thinks, when the right guy comes along and wraps his arms around me and professes his undying love and he'll give up the whole world for me, that is a wonderful thing. But he can't fill her. He can't be perfect. He can't always be there to hug her when she needs it. He won't always say the right thing. And sometimes she'll be really upset with him. But it will work in marriage too, to go back to God. Let him fill her. Let us be completely filled with Jesus, and then reach out in love to others. And then the happiness is there. So our happiness is never dependent on people.
Mm-hmm.
If we wait for other people to make us happy, they'll fail us. If we let God make us happy, and we get happy from reaching out to others, we can always be happy.
Yeah, and I feel like that's really important, because a lot of girls do have that misconception of, I know, I still catch myself on the hard days, especially if there is someone that I like, and I don't feel like they might not like me too, that there's this point of depression of being like, if they liked me, if I knew that someday that he was going to wrap his arms around me and make me feel better, you know, that when I come home from a hard day and I'm going to be like, this is how they made me feel, he's just going to make me feel better. And I realize this feeling is still going to be there, and it's unfair to expect that a human man who doesn't understand what it's like to feel that emotion is going to completely understand and make me feel better.
Right.
Because he won't and he can't. And having a man in your life won't change those feelings.
Right. When we're completely filled with Jesus, then anything other people offer to us is a gift. That is just an extra blessing on the top.
Wow. That's so good. And I feel like there's been so much good advice that it's probably going to be hard to pick one good piece of advice to give to our audience. But what is one piece of advice that you would give them if someone's struggling with feeling insecure, and someone's struggling with feeling like they can't find that group of friends who's making them feel worth something?
Right. Right. So that goes to my bottom line, which is look in God's Word, read the Psalms, read anything, ask God to show you how much he loves you. Believe what he says. Don't tell yourself it's not true. That's the enemy lying to you. Go to God, be filled with him, and then find other people to reach out to you, and you'll find that happiness that you're looking for and that fulfillment.
Wow, that's so good. Thank you so much for coming on today, Mom. Wow, that was so good. I feel like we got so much good advice from my mom in this episode. And what I'm really excited about is that my mom has agreed to answer your questions in about a week or two in a second video, a part 2 of this conversation. If you have questions or stories that you would like to share with her to get her advice about, then go ahead, send them to the email address I linked below, girlslikeus365@gmail.com, and we will do a second episode, a part 2, in about a week or two if we get enough questions. But that's an if we get enough questions, so I need to hear from you. If you have questions or you have stories that you would like answers for instance, if you have a specific situation that you'd like her to speak into, you can keep it completely anonymous, you can change the names, I don't care, but go ahead, reach out, because this is a really awesome opportunity for my mom to be able to speak into your specific situations.